consequence of trauma is you don't think you're worthy enough to live that beautiful life that somebody's living. You're kind of destined for this. But I wanted to be a better wife to my husband, and I wanted to be a better mom to my daughter. And that was the driving force for me. I started with them, but now this is for me. I could live this life and I'm totally worthy of it, but it required me to do the work. Somebody couldn't give me that. It required some effort on my part.
You do have to put in the work, and it doesn't happen overnight. It's not a snap your fingers kind of thing. And I would add that it's totally worth it. It's totally worth putting in all the work so you can get to the other side. What is up, Impact Heroes? Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Rick Ornelas. Thank you for spending some time with us today because we know time's a valuable resource and we're going to make it worth your while. I appreciate each and every one of you, not just for listening, but for who you are. I know you're sparking change to make the world a better place every day, and I am humbled and grateful for your efforts. It takes all of us doing our part to spread positive change, and that's what this show is all about. Motivating you with stories of struggle, courage, and hope to empower you to make a difference in your life and the lives of others.
In case you missed it,
what would you say to someone that is struggling? You've been in difficult situations. What would you say to them that can help them to get out of them?
Let's not pay attention to the fear. Let's look at your reaction to it. I encourage people to use therapy and meditation, but more importantly, let's get to work. Let's find out what is your reaction to fear. Let's not waste any time. Let's look for the clues and the patterns of how I react to fear. And let's stop the negative behavior. When you have a reaction to fear and you're pissed off, stop. Breathe through your nose, out through your mind. Remember, recollect yourself with something bigger than you that loves you, and then roll back into the good behavior. In other words, when your mind, body, and soul are on fire.
Available everywhere you listen to your podcasts.
Welcome back, Impact Heroes. Today we have the pleasure of speaking to our latest iSpark Change social impact hero, and she is a special one indeed. Our guest today wakes up each day with a fervent passion to advocate for women who suffer from sexual abuse, harassment, or discrimination. She's a seasoned lawyer with 21 years of experience, an author, a beacon of hope for those in the darkness, and a fierce advocate for justice. I love that. She's not only recovered millions of dollars for her clients, but has also provided a voice for countless women who have suffered in silence. But her impact doesn't stop there. She's motivated by the pains of her childhood, and her mission is a simple yet profound message. It's time to break the silence. Through her groundbreaking book, Fired Up, Fueling Triumph from Trauma, she's catalyzed a movement to empower women to stand up against their abusers and reclaim their power. Please join me in welcoming the unwavering, inspirational, and unstoppable Arleen Haeggquist.
Oh, thank you so much for that. Thanks for having me on too.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. And as I said off air, I've been looking forward to this conversation to learn more about you and how you got into doing the work that you're doing. So thank you. So I'm going to dive right in, Arleen. The first question I have is, on this podcast, we see you as someone that we call a social impact hero, someone that is spreading positive change, someone by our definition, which is an acronym, who honors their purpose, engages the audience in their mission, ripples their message to spread positive change, and opens their heart to the world. So we see you as being a hero. My question to you is, do you see yourself as a hero?
It's a loaded question. So I have been called a hero, and some of those adjectives in your acronym people have described me as, but do I personally view myself as that? No, I just have this sense that I want to make everybody their own hero. Like, you can live this amazing life and you could be your own hero where you feel amazing to just be you. And that's what gets me up every day, is to have women feel that way.
Well, I love the way you describe that, right? That everybody can be their own hero. So tell me, did you have to discover that for yourself to be your own hero?
Yeah, it's been a lot of years of inner work to get me to that point because of the way I grew up. And so now that I have discovered it and what that means, I just want other people to feel the same way. And I think that comes from breaking the silence about what happened. So maybe I've jumped ahead as to
No.
what I'm talking about.
Yeah, not at all. I mean, that's a perfect segue. That's where I would go next. And first I applaud you for wanting to do that work and wanting to help others, because as I said in your intro in the bio about suffering in silence, so many people suffer in silence. And even if they do find some sort of comfort or solace for their condition, they never share it with anyone else, right? They just keep it completely silent. And I feel that, in just like Joseph Campbell says in The Hero's Journey, that it is our duty as heroes to bestow what we have learned to others, in the duty of servicing others and helping them in their journey to make make their journey easier or better in some way. So obviously you didn't get to this point overnight. So share how, how, at least by my definition, how you got to hero status and how you got to the point where you're doing what you do now.
Sure. Yeah, it was definitely not overnight, and it wasn't linear as well. So anybody who thinks there's like a straight line to get here, that's not how it worked. So my background as a young kid, I came from a very abusive home. My father was abusive in all the ways. So he was emotionally abusive, he was physically abusive, and he was sexually abusive. And he was the man that was supposed to be building me up, but he was the man that was tearing me down. And I felt so alone as a child. I tried to take my own life twice. One when I was only like 11 years old, and then later when I was 16, because I couldn't figure out a way out. I was in this home. My mom knew what was going on, and she never said anything. And so at that time, everything was kept inside. I felt helpless. I felt hopeless. And all I wanted to do was get out. Fortunately, I learned when I was in high school that I could go to college. And if I went to college, I could move out of my house and I wouldn't have to be there anymore. And so I figured out how to, apply to college and figure out grants, because nobody had gone to college before that I knew. So I didn't have a path to follow someone, but I figured out how to, apply to college, how to apply for money. And I got in and I got to go to San Diego. And that's where I would say my healing started, except I didn't know it. In college, when I got there, I felt free. I've never felt so high. I'd never felt so high before. I met amazing friends who just accepted me as myself. And it was the first time I got to see a world different than the one I grew up in. When you're growing up in a house like that, you don't know that you're being abused. You don't know it's any different. It's just your life. And so I think college really gave me the opportunity to see that not everybody lived that way. I mean, I had some glimpses of that growing up, in the sense of like some friends from school and their parents, or I watched a lot of Brady Bunch. I loved the Brady Bunch. The Brady Bunch was like my vision of the family that I wanted. And so I had a little glimpse of it, but it wasn't until college that I felt free and I felt just good about myself. So that's kind of where my journey begins.
Well, first off, thank you for sharing that. And I too did love the Brady Bunch when I was younger. I remember where I grew up, in LA, specifically Burbank, not too far from all the studios. I remember that, I think we saw where the home was, or to try to find out where this actual house was, to see if these were real people, with this fairy tale kind of life. And obviously most families have issues, dysfunction. I grew up with an alcoholic father and broken home and abuse and everything as well. And so that, that's familiar to me. In your situation, would you say, Arleen, that it was when you got to college, right? And you said you met some great people and they supported you and you could be yourself and, be yourself. Would you say, what was the bigger component that led to your healing? Was it being removed from that situation and no longer living in that situation, or was it the environment that you were in? And I know there's a lot of both, but what would you say was the bigger driving factor?
I think it was the environment that I was in. because I wasn't every day either being scared about what was going to happen. I wasn't living in fear. I could just be myself, and it allowed me to discover myself. I don't think I realized who I was and what I was even capable of, because all around me, I was told that I was nothing, right? My dad not only, did horrible things, he said horrible things. Like the words that came out of his mouth made me believe that I would amount to nothing.
Yeah.
And so I think college was just this opportunity where people didn't see me that way. They didn't know anything about my
Mhm.
past. And so I really think it was the environment. And just for a little bit of clarity on that, I didn't know when I got to college I was on this healing journey. I just, when I got to college, was like,
Mhm.
this is great. And I really thought like I had left that behind. I'd moved on, and things, were fine, right? Like, what else is there to do?
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I got married, I had a daughter, that I realized that I needed to do something different, because my past, again, I didn't know it, but my past and the trauma and the abuse that I experienced was affecting my relationships. It was affecting how I showed up with my daughter. And for them, I wanted to do something different. And again, it was through the inner work, and it was through me going to therapy and doing other healing modalities that I realized that all that abuse left, you know, a lifelong of consequences that nobody was going to clean up for me, that it was
Mhm.
up to me to do something different. Like I wasn't going to live there anymore. And in order to change how I was experiencing the world, I needed to do something different. So that's, I would say, I felt high in college. And I think when I did start having so many consequences, physically, there was physical symptoms that showed up, the relationships that it was affecting, and the fact that I didn't feel high anymore, right? I didn't feel so good about myself anymore. And knowing that I could have something different made me realize, okay, what's going on? And at that time, I
Mhm.
blamed it on, oh, it's my relationship, or it's, dealing with postpartum. Like I was blaming it on things that were unrelated to what I experienced in the past. So
Yeah. So in that combination of things, Alreen, how did you how did you put those pieces together to say, hey, this might be related to, what happened, all these years ago? Because obviously some time had passed, between you finishing school and getting married and have a child and everything. So what was really that catalyst, or what was that signaling marker for you to really
y-
notify it, notify what it
yeah,
is?
I think that's the evolution. I mean, I'm able to speak about it now, but as you're going through it, you're still not connecting the dots. You're still just
Mhm.
like, what's going on? Why am I so depressed? Why do I keep, why does my husband bother me? Why is when my daughter crying, is my like arms tingling where I can't be around her? You're noticing what's going on around you. But at that time, I think it's them. I think, he's the problem or she's the problem. Like you're blaming it on all these external factors. But what really helps me is going to therapy. I would say that's probably the biggest way where I kind of start connecting the pieces. And my therapist is really the first time I hear the word trigger, and how these are triggers, and they're triggers from my past. And
Mhm.
that's PTSD.
Yeah.
Those things happen as a part of survival. You kept them all in, but now they're coming out in these ways. And so I would say that it wasn't, again, overnight where you're just like, oh, okay, this is why I'm behaving this way, but it was the want to do something different, and then going to therapy where somebody is helping you kind of piece it together, right? And
Yeah.
identify what's going on, which is deeper than what the external reasons you might think it is.
Yeah, exactly. And I would venture to say, and tell me if this is accurate, that you knew there was a better way. You knew that it didn't have to be the way that it was, at least at the very, at the very core. You knew that, okay, maybe these things, this is happening, and this is happening, and this is happening. There's got to be a way to improve the situation.
Yeah, and because you see it in other people, right? Other people I didn't think were struggling in that way, or didn't react the way that I was reacting. And so I could see that they were doing it, but at that time, you know, I just thought I wasn't worthy to have that life, right? And again, this is
Mm.
like the consequence of trauma is like you don't think you're worthy enough to live that beautiful life that somebody's living. You're kind of destined for this. But I wanted to learn to do something different because I wanted to be a better wife to my husband and I wanted to be a better mom to my daughter. And that was the driving force for me.
Mhm.
I knew it could be different, but I didn't think it could be different for me.
Yeah. And I guess over time you've gotten to a better place, knowing it can be different for you. It can be different for them, obviously,
Yes,
and for you, and just overall, right? That you can live the life that you want to live.
for sure. Yeah, it started with them, but now it's like, oh no, now it's for me. Now
Yeah.
I could live this life and I'm totally worthy of it. But it required me to do the work, right? Like
Mhm.
somebody couldn't give me that. It required some effort on my part.
And I think that's the biggest thing for a lot of people is, and you touched on a couple, important points that I'll amplify for the audience is one, a lot of us tend to look outward first when there's something going on, when most of the time, often the time, it is something, that's stemming from inside, not always, a lot of the time, right? And we're all a product of our upbringing and our experiences and our background and education and all of that. We're all a product of all of those factors, so it all gets lumped into this soup that makes up who we are. And being humans, unfortunately we don't come with an owner's manual, so your computer's 5 years old and it has an issue, right? An error message pops up or something, you can get some help. With humans it's like, oh, when I'm 11 or 22 or 35, something goes on. It's not like you can be like, oh, let me just check the manual and figure out what is usually going on. And so it becomes a lot more challenging. So that point, and then the second point is that you have to put in the work, is that you do have to put in the work, and it doesn't happen overnight. It's not a snap your fingers kind of thing. And I would add the third part in that, and you tell me if you agree, the third part in that is that it's totally worth it. It's totally worth putting in all the work so you can get to the other side.
Yeah, for sure. Like I look at it more like it's like a high. Like now that I've experienced it, I want more of it. Like I
Mhm.
can keep getting better and it just keeps because there's not an end point. It's not like, okay, I had, this horrible thing happen to me. If I go to therapy, I'm going to be okay tomorrow and I don't have to do anything else, forever.
Mhm.
And I wanted that. I thought I could do that. Like when I showed up to my therapist for the first time, I was like, all right, I've been struggling with my daughter and I'm having some issues with my husband. I've heard therapy is good. So I'm here. I'll tell you what happened to me when I was a child. I'm planning to be here for 4 sessions because I don't, want to see you forever. And I think after that, we should be good. I feel like 4 sessions, 4 hours is a sufficient amount of time for us to do this, And he laughed and I was serious. I was like,
Like
this
I'm
is,
laughing too right now, having gone to therapy and everything, and you're like,
yeah.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, and I still see my therapist, right? Like because different things as my daughter develops, she's turning 12 tomorrow, new things come up, This was when
Yeah.
she was a baby, and as she's grown, new things come up in her development that trigger me in some certain ways because again, my upbringing was very different. But in order for me to stop that generational trauma towards her, I have to do some work on myself.
Yeah, and that's a huge point right there, is that, as I said just a minute ago, about we're all a product of our experience and our upbringing, is that you don't want to transfer that over, or I'm just speaking metaphorically, right? You don't
Yeah.
we as parents, we want the best for our children, and we want them to have the things that we didn't have, and all those type of things. So yeah, that's hugely important. And I chuckled when you said, oh, I'm going to be good with 4 sessions, because I mean, I remember going to family counseling when I was younger. My parents were having their issues with my father's alcoholism and everything, and they eventually split up after 18 years. And then in my own marriage of next month will be a month from today, will
Mhm.
be of the airing of the recording of this episode will be 28 years.
Oh, wow.
And over the years we've gone to therapy and counseling and everything, and knowing that it it is needed to help relationships along with those areas that you just can't figure out on your own, right?
Right, like
It's
where
just
it's coming from.
yeah, where it's coming from, or how do I deal with it, or what's the best way to move forward. And to use the car analogy, yeah, maybe how to change your oil or put air in the tires or whatever, but that doesn't mean how to completely replace the transmission. And
Right.
that's where you need the help of others, like like you found a good therapist. And so obviously you got help. Obviously you've been putting in the work, and you want it to be better, right? To keep evolving, which is fantastic. What did the role? How did I want to go back to kind of where we started about you being a hero? How did law play a part in your story, and first choosing to practice law, and then in how you use your profession to help others now?
Sure. So growing up, there was a spiritual leader that was a lawyer, and I had no mentors. I didn't know who to look up to, but looking up to a spiritual leader sounded pretty good. And he was a lawyer. So that kind of got the lawyer seed in my brain. And that was what gave me, when somebody asked you, what do you want to be when you grow up? I said a lawyer. And so that kind of just followed me, went to college, and I went straight to law school. As I got to college, I really became, I don't like to say anti-corporate, but it's where I learned corporations took advantage of people. And so I learned then I am going to go after corporations that take advantage of people. And so that's what I did when I first got out of law school. I did consumer fraud work. And then when I started my own business almost 16 years ago, I switched over because I wanted to help women and I wanted to help survivors. And so I started doing employment law. So people that have been harassed in the workplace. What I learned through the work of working on myself and doing the work, when I was getting triggered, I have now learned. So when I get triggered, so let me tell you a little bit about what happens to me when I get triggered. If somebody triggers me, I get really angry, and I'm really fierce. Like I don't care who's on the other side, I can just spout back.
Mhm.
And I now have learned to control that and put it towards the people that I go up against. So,
Mm.
and this anger and this rage is coming from the fact that when I was a kid, that's what I wanted to do towards my dad and the other people that abused me, but I kept it all in and I was quiet. So now when I think somebody else is suffering an injustice or is being harmed, I get really angry. And so I've learned to control that and put it towards the people that are hurting my clients. And I now use that as like my superpower because I think
Mhm.
that makes me very different than other attorneys because I have this innate passion to go up against people's abusers. And so that's how I switched it and really have not switched it, but really focused in on women that have been abused because I just have this natural instinct to protect them.
Yeah, you're channeling your traumatic event into helping them,
Yeah.
and that's what's driving that passion. And I'm sure that does come out very effectively in representing them.
Yeah, it's
And
like it really does. I mean, not only, do my clients see it, opposing counsel sees it, right? It's just it's a fierceness that not that people are scared of necessarily, but it is intimidating, right? Because they don't know what to do with me. Like I am
yeah,
not backing down for whatever you're going to throw at me. And I
yeah,
think that's hard for people, right? Because people we go up against are always going to have more power, more money, more resources. And so you have to have the strength to go up against them. And I have that and I help my clients have that. I'm standing with you so you can do that against your abuser.
yeah. I love the empowering nature of that. Of being able to stand up for those that aren't standing up for themselves, or can't, or don't know how, or don't have the
Right.
means, or whatever the reason is. So,
Or
what
their
would you
voice has
say?
been silenced, right? Like they've been silenced, right?
Yeah,
That's the thing with abuse. It's like one of the consequences are that you have this fear and this shame that goes along with it and it silences you. And so to me, I look at my role as helping them find it and use it to empower them to know that they can.
yeah. So, when were you first empowered to share your story with others, or to share it on a bigger scale?
Yeah, so that's very recent. So my whole life, I never told anybody. I would say, like to my husband, it was very, my dad was abusive, or just very general terms. I never got into details. It wasn't until I published my book, and my book just came out in September. That was the first time I put in, some details as to what happened and how I felt during this whole process. What empowered me to do it, I would say, is my clients who on a daily basis have to tell their story, have to be cross-examined about it, and have to be told that they're lying. And I wanted to experience that with them. I also want to share with people how empowering it is. I have now been empowered because I have gone to therapy. I don't hide it, I don't keep it a secret.
Mhm.
And in order to help other people, like show them that if you do this, it will help you too, I felt like I needed to write a book to share that experience. So I think it's the clients that empowered me because them telling their story. And I'm not telling everybody they have to write a book, but the reason for my book is to show you that once you let it out, once you're not suffering on the inside all by yourself, that's when you can really start your healing journey. That's when real change happens. And I saw that with myself as I've gone through therapy and talked about my experience.
Mhm.
And I see that every day with my clients who come in, and at the end of it, they're empowered because they didn't just sit quiet and take it. They stood up, they said something, and they said this isn't okay.
Yeah, that's where they, in essence, take their power, back that they've lost. So the book is titled "Fired Up: Fueling Triumph from Trauma." We'll make sure that there's a link in the show notes below for anyone
Thank you.
listening. Yeah, absolutely. So, Alreen, I'm curious in two questions, and they're both related. Okay, so first is, how have you seen your? I mean, you kind of alluded to it already, but I want to specifically hone in on, since you started sharing your story, right? Since you wrote the book and you started, making that more widely known. How has your work changed, and then how has your life changed?
I think it was such, what's the word? It weighed so heavy on me because it was something that I didn't share with people, and I was always worried what people would think if I told them. And now I just feel free. And each time, like writing a book was one thing, talking to you on air is a different thing. And each time it just lifts the weight off me. Like it just like
Mhm.
doesn't matter. And I guess it doesn't have the power and control it had over me as it once did. That that fear and that shame of it doesn't exist. So I would say I feel much freer, and it has improved my relationships. Again, how I show up in the world. Like if you feel good in your own skin, people feel that energy. So it's improved my life because it's improved my relationships.
And in work, like with clients, just in that short period of time, have you seen a change with clients that I mean, or were you sharing it with clients before, just on a private one-to-one level, or how does that change, or what did it look like before?
I think if people have read the book, or not even read the book, but just know that I share the same experience as them, I think that makes them want to come with me. So some clients have said, "I saw you share your story and I want you to represent me." So I guess it's affected that. But I don't think it's affected my relationship with my clients. No, I wasn't sharing it before, even one-on-one with clients. Same
Mhm.
thing. I might say I had a similar experience, something to that effect, but never any details. So
Yeah, and it's just early, so
yeah, it's early.
the best is yet to come. The best
Yes,
is yet to come.
very true.
So, Alreen, as I mentioned in the beginning, part of being a social impact hero is, that you honor your purpose. So, what would you define, in a few words, how would you define your purpose at this point in your life?
My purpose is to stop the silence, to stop keeping it inside and keeping it a secret, like let out the fact that you were sexually abused and it wasn't okay, but now you have to do some work to help yourself live your best life. So it wasn't your fault, but unfortunately you got to clean it up and do something about it.
Yeah, well, you're definitely, checking the other boxes of engaging others in your mission, and, opening your heart to the world and so forth. So thank you for sharing all of that. So, Alreen, how can our audience connect with you or learn more about you? Obviously, I said we'll put the link for the book in the show notes.
Sure. I have a website. It's alreen.com, ALREEN. And if they want to check out like an intro chapter to my book, you can, sign up and you get a free chapter on the website as well. So, and I
Well,
would
that's
love to connect.
fantastic. I have to add this in there, is I don't know many people that their website can just be their first name. I mean, maybe you and like Madonna or someone, but there's not a lot of people who can just have their website be their first name. So very fortunate in that in that regard.
Yes. I'll take it. Yeah, that's my same Instagram handle as well. It's just my
Oh
name.
yeah, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. I mean, first last name. There are a few Rick Cornelises out in the world, but I don't think I've ever had anyone on the program, any guest that their website is just that simple. So that'll be easy for us to share.
Yes.
Well, a couple final questions that we ask all our guests here on the podcast. And one is about what we've coined as spark moments. And these are moments in life where our actions or the actions of another go far beyond the initial act. And so it's like throwing a pebble in a pond and you don't know how far that's going to go. So share a story that is a positive example of a spark moment in your life where either you impacted someone and then you saw that ripple effect later, or that your life was impacted by someone and you didn't realize that ripple until much later.
Oh, I guess I have both. Where I see the ripple effect, I mean, it really is my daughter Maya. I look at her as my mini me, but without all the shit, this is what a healthy childhood would look like. And I think the ripple effects to that is still left to be unseen. Like if I had grown up healthy, what would my life have looked like? And I think I get to see that in her every day as she grows. She rides horses, she plays soccer, we have dinner together. It's just, it is really a fantasy that I used to watch on the Brady Bunch, is how my life with her is.
Yeah. Beautiful.
And so with respect to, I guess you don't want me to answer both. It was an or.
No, you're welcome to answer both. Share the other one. If one came to mind, by all means, share.
The other one was really my GI doctor. I would say it was really impactful because she just kept telling me to get in touch with my feelings, and I hated it. Like, I hated when she said it because I couldn't understand what she meant. But because she kept pushing and she kept pushing, that was such a big part of my healing. And all it means now, it took me a long time to learn what it meant, but getting in touch with when you were experiencing the abuse or you were experiencing some sort of trauma, how did you feel at that point? What were the feelings inside you? And getting in touch with that instead of like trying to push them away, but accepting them as feelings that you were having was a big part to healing, because my body isn't like fighting itself anymore over it. Mm-hmm. So to me, that had a ripple effect because it really has given me tools when I am experiencing something to come back to, well, what is that making me feel? How is my body reacting to a certain situation? And so that's left a big impact on me.
Yeah, great spark moments. Thank you for sharing both of them. And two comments on both of them. I don't always comment on spark moments, but two that I want to share is that one with your daughter is that, a diamond is only beautiful because of all the cuts and flaws and imperfections and angles and all these things. It's not that little shiny part at the top. It's everything else that makes up its brilliance. And so without having to go through, when you say, oh, where would I have been or what would our relationship, I bet you it couldn't be any better. I bet you it's exactly where it is as a result of everything that you've learned in your life and gone through in your life. And then the impact that I was getting from what you're sharing with your GI doctor, that, spark moments come from anywhere, and that it can be of a physical nature, right? That trauma, those emotional things, those mental components, they can manifest in physical ways, and sometimes serious physical ways. And so definitely something to be aware of, for individuals moving forward. I mean, great little side tip on there for our audience.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's when you realize that the mind and body is connected, is very powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing those. Beautiful. So our goal at iSpark Change is to positively impact 1 billion people within 5 years of launching our upcoming social impact social media platform. Now, we know we can't do that alone. We know we need the help of impactful leaders like yourself to show others the way, because many people feel, as I once did, that they're too small to make a difference, right? And they suffer in silence, as you said. So we value your thoughts and opinions as a social impact hero. So I want you to peer into the future, peer into our iSpark Change crystal ball here, and tell me, what can the world become if everyone starts believing that they can share their voice and impact others positively?
I mean, yeah, it's beautiful, right? We change statistics. So for me, my big statistic I want to change is when you think about the fact that 50% of women have been sexually assaulted. And I think that number is low because many people get unreported. So if we start talking about it, if we stop the silence, I think we can change those numbers so that my daughter, again, doesn't go into those types of numbers as she gets into adolescence.
Yeah, and it all starts with people doing work like you are now. So thank you very much, Arleen. Very much
Yeah,
appreciated.
thank
Well,
you.
thank you for taking time to share your heart and wisdom with our audience today. You came in and you over delivered, as I knew you would. Your desire to impact others is evident, and you are filled with passion, determination, and you lead with a heart of humility and gratitude, which tells me you'll have success in all facets of life. And this is only the beginning of your social impact.
Thank you.
All right, Impact Heroes, it's our stories that connect us all, and we loved hearing Arleen's today. Arleen Haeggquist, you're not only an inspiring and amazing human being, you truly are an iSpark Change social impact hero. We'll see you all next time.
Do you want Rick to speak at your event? Here's what others have to say.
Did not know his story, and it was so inspirational, and his presence on stage, his authenticity was just incredible.
Moment made me feel some type of way. My name is Craig Siegel.
If you're looking for a speaker for your next event, hire Rick. I promise you this, you will not be disappointed.
Visit rickcornelis.com to book him today.